Okay, let's see, moving on. Steve Darrow's back. He says, see more. I was thinking about the everyone starting at the same line analogy, and it occurs to me that the race of life is actually a relay race. Excellent point. I've just read the first sentence, and I already see where you're going with this. Your relative advantage in the race is that your coal mining and cotton carting ancestors were able to hand the baton off a little further ahead each generation. From that perspective, some people do have an advantage, but this misses the point that it is about running the race to the best of one's ability so that they can hand off their baton a little bit further ahead. Given these openings for criticism, is there a better analogy than the race of life to convey our principles? The socialism race, I mean, I've used it many times. I illustrated it in the socialism video from We the People 2.0. And basically said, if you think about it, capitalism is a race where everybody starts from the same line. This is equality of opportunity. Nobody gets to start ahead or behind. And then socialism is equality of result, where everybody has to finish the same line. And you can't run faster than your fastest, so socialism means that everybody runs the race at the speed of the slowest runner. That essence of the argument is correct. That's why socialism is a suppressive selector. It selects for hopelessness and laziness. That's why there's so much alcoholism in Russia, and why so many of these countries like Venezuela are in the shape they're in. It suppresses ambition because it eliminates the reward for ambition. And same for hard work. If you're not going to be rewarded for working harder than other people, then why would you? And the example of the classroom grades is a great example of that mangling it a little bit, but basically a teacher decides he's going to average the grades in the class. Now he just comes in with this. He's just introduced socialism to the classroom. And what happens is the students who are bright and who study hard, who have the discipline and the habits to do really well academically, will take the test and they'll get their A's. And the people who, in fact, essentially what happens is we're going to socialize the class, and people take the first test much the same way they would have taken the last one. The A and B students do well, the C students do okay, and the D and F students do badly. But when everybody gets a C, what that does is it pisses off the A and B students so much, especially the A+ students, that over time they simply stop studying that hard because there's no reason to. And it's not only is there no reason to, in other words, it's not just a question of you don't get the advantages of being an A, you now get the advantages of being a C. It's not just that suppresses it. There's an emotional revenge reaction at work here, which is, okay, this is the rules. If this is how we've made the rules, if the slow and lazy and stupid half has decided to outvote us and decided that they're going to get equal results of our work, then fine, I'll just go on welfare like everybody else. Only the brave, thank you, guys. I know for an absolute certain fact, my income's not at this threshold yet, but I know for an absolute fact that if Bernie Sanders was president and had passed his agenda and was going to put a 92 or 93% federal tax on every dollar I made above $414,000, something like that, then I would make $413,999 that year and not a dollar more. I will be damned if I'm going to give somebody 93 cents of every dollar I make. I just won't do it. Nobody else will either. So all of those plans to buy buildings or expand your business or hire new people, no, I'm not going to. I could probably make $1.3 million this year. You're going to take 93% of everything I make above $414,000. I'll make $413,999, and I'll fire people and not hire others. And now there's your socialism. If you think, Bernie, that I'm going to work that hard for you, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do it. And this is kind of the revenge thing. It's like, okay, well, I voted on the rules. Other people outvoted me. These are the rules. And now you get what you deserve. I had this thought about colleges recently, where people say, "Oh, you got to get out there and fight them. You got to get out there and try and turn this tide against free speech." And this is just my appraisal of it. I try to do strategic thinking, upper level thinking, and get up as high as I can and trying to look down and see what the big picture is. And I've come to the conclusion that trying to reverse this totalitarianism on college campuses is a mistake. It's a conclusion I've come to reluctantly and over a long period of time. But I think it's a mistake. And I think it's a mistake. People say, well, are you just going to abandon the field? Or are you just going to give it to them? Are you just going to walk away? Are you just going to surrender? Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it because the key to winning the war is knowing when to get out of a battle that you're losing. You don't become pot committed. If you've got an okay hand, you don't bet the farm on an okay hand. And if things are going against you, stick in there and fight for a while and hope to see things change. But if the trend lines are all down and things are getting worse and worse against you, then it's time to cut your losses and get out of there and start thinking about a new hand. Having thought this through to its logical conclusion, if we were to simply stop trying to educate these kids at places like Hampshire College and all the rest of them, and Trigglypuff and all the rest of these hysterical children, and all these Antifa people and their safe spaces and their speech codes and all the rest. I'm at the point now where I say, let them have it. No, knock yourselves out. Well, what about colleges? What about universities? Don't you care about universities? I used to care about universities. I used to care about NASA too. But no, it's just not true anymore. What was true when I was young is not true anymore. NASA, as I've said many times, I had the NASA vector tattooed on the inside of my skin. I just worshipped NASA. And then came Challenger and the realization that they knew that there were problems with those SRBs, and they launched anyway because they got lucky before and they get lucky again. And then there was a 15-year period or whatever of just, going round in circles. And, well, what do we have the space station for? We have the space station so we have a place to dock the space shuttle. Well, what do we have the space shuttle for? We have the space shuttle to support the space station. And then you find out that the space station is in an orbit that is so highly inclined that it cannot reach the solar system. In other words, the ecliptic is the plane of the planets. All the planes essentially move in a flat plane around the sun. And that you could have put the space station in exactly that flat plane orbit so that a little bit of push would get you wherever you wanted to go. But no, they had to incline the orbit of the International Space Station in order for the Russians to be able to launch to it. And since we decided that some percentage of this, I don't know, we shouldered the huge, major amount of this. But Russia paid some, and Japan and all the rest. So in order to get to the space station, the Russians have to have it in a northerly, it has to be inclined so that they can reach it because they're launching from further north. So they put the International Space Station in a highly inclined orbit. And now you can't get to the solar system, can't get to the moon, can't get to the solar system because that inclination has to be flattened out. And it takes so much energy to do that you've completely given up the advantage of starting from space in the first place. This is another situation where I see this organization that I loved for what they did with Apollo and Gemini and Mercury before that, doing something political that utterly defeats the mission. NASA's budget in 2016, round numbers, is $13 billion, and in 2004 it was $13 billion, and in 2004 we were flying 4 space shuttles. No, yeah, 3 by that point. In other words, we're spending as much money on NASA not flying space shuttles as we did when we were flying space shuttles. That tells me it is a standing army of bureaucrats. And NASA is doing outreach education programs to the Muslim world, and they have the most green building in the entire federal government, the most energy efficient building in the entire federal government. Gee, what an incredible benefit for our space program. And so I simply, over the course of 25, 30, 40 years, I went from adoration to disappointment to disbelief to to contempt and now anger and scorn. Just finally reached cynicism about it. It's like, of course they're not going to do anything. So did I give up on the space program? No, I gave up on NASA. Now you find guys like SpaceX and Blue Origin just had a successful launch, and Virgin dropped the ball. One of the high points of my life is getting to be friends with Burt Rutan. He did that Spaceship One mission. I want to say it was 2004. It was no later than 2007. I think it was 2004. That's 13 years ago. He thought that by the time they were done 2 years later, there'd be 30 of these vehicles going up and companies competing against each other. No, dropped the ball again because of safety. So I feel the same way about colleges. I admire the U.S. University system, and I enjoyed myself there, and I can get a good education. And that's not true anymore. NASA used to send men to the moon. That's not true anymore either. I don't like it, but I can't do anything about it. And so, as with manned spaceflight, you give up on NASA doesn't mean you give up on manned spaceflight, but it does require a pretty big paradigm shift. It's not an easy place to get to. Likewise, that's how I feel about the universities. We're losing the fight there. And so comes a point when it's like, since we're losing the fight, the harder we try to resist, the longer it's going to go on. If we're going to lose this fight, then the sooner we realize it and get out of the fight, the more resources we'll conserve to be able to fight someplace else. So let them have them. If those left-wing professors and these spoiled children want to have a college education that means that they're exposed to nothing and they come out stupider than they went in, and if they're this determined to have it, then simply, okay. And what will happen is a college degree, it's been happening in the last 3 or 4 years. I want to say it really started with the Mizzou students and stuff and the whole Black Lives Matter movement, the whole thing. It's like, your college diploma means nothing anymore. It means nothing anymore. It's simply, you come from a university. It's true for the University of Florida as any other place. It's like you've got safe spaces and you've got trigger warnings and you've got this and that, and you're not going to let Ben Shapiro speak on your campus because it might have upset somebody. Okay. And the faculty's backing you on this? Okay. You win. You don't win. You get your way. So enjoy it. You're going to go to a school where you're going to go learn nothing and be pampered for another 4 years. But reality is reality, and reality cannot be denied, and sooner or later you're going to deal with reality. And I don't particularly like you, people, because you should know better than this. And the arrogance of these students and the narcissism and the vanity and the uselessness of so many of these progressive students. Okay, congratulations. You've now managed to find a way to intimidate your elders into giving you everything you want. You did that your entire lives. Now, instead of it ending at high school, now it's going to end at college. And when you're 22 or 23, maybe you want to be a grad student, you push it back to 26, 27. But the time is going to come when there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people with degrees in feminist studies, and nobody's going to be paying for feminist studies. There might be a couple of score jobs as teachers of feminist studies, and that's it. And then you're going to be out in the world with no skills and no emotional skills and no ability to cope and none of it. And you're just simply going to get hit in the face with reality. Meanwhile, those of us who are prepared to face reality have been homeschooling our kids or been learning things on the internet, been going back to some degree of kind of apprenticeship things, and they're going to clean your clocks, and that's fine with me. You brought this on yourself. You built this thing for yourself. Okay, knock yourself out. I want to accelerate the destruction of the universities in this country. I don't want to fight it. That battle's lost. This is my personal opinion, but that battle's lost. So let's accelerate the collapse of this thing that's not worth fighting for anymore. And that means that it's the opposite of surrendering. That means that instead of trying to basically roll this gigantic boulder that gets heavier, heavier, and heavier up a taller and taller hill, why don't we just step aside and let that boulder go crashing down to the bottom and figure out where we can put our energy where it will do more good. Self-selecting, I'm a self-educated person. I know that doesn't mean everybody is or can be, but that's just a question of knowing how. It's not a capabilities issue. So yeah, Stout Cat mentioned talk to Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe gets it too. Mike Rowe completely gets it. He says, basically, listen, if you're 18 years old and you don't go to college, and instead you either go to a trade school or you apprentice with somebody, and by the time you're 22, you're an experienced auto mechanic with zero debt, your life is going to be much, much better than the life of somebody who's also 22 with a degree in, gender studies and $200,000 debt over their head. So, yeah, I'm just in the mood to get out of its way now. And I want to see the reactions on these savages, because these social justice warriors are horrid, horrible people. I want to be there. I want to live long enough to see what their reaction is when they finally confront the brick wall of reality and realize just how badly ripped off they've been and how much they were complicit in their own destruction. The arrogance of these students is simply unbelievable. But it's true for virtually all teenagers, but in this case, they're really abusing the privilege. Our friend